The sun was beating down on my father's backyard in Austin, Texas, and the smell of smoked ribs and corn on the grill wrapped the air in a comforting haze. Laughter carried across the lawn where cousins chased each other between picnic tables covered in red and white checkered cloths. I had been sitting on the far bench catching up with Aunt Margaret about school supplies for my class this fall. It was a perfectly ordinary family barbecue until my sister Laura's voice cut through the air sharp and commanding. Bite. For a second, I thought I had misheard her. The word sounded foreign, jagged, unreal coming from my sister, who had always been the confident, polished attorney in our family. But before I could process it, her German shepherd lunged from where it had been sitting obediently at her feet. His massive body blurred in motion, paws pounding the patio stones, jaws opening with a guttural growl that froze me in place. The next thing I knew, teeth sank into my calf with crushing pressure. A bolt of pain tore up my leg, stealing my breath. My scream ripped through the summer air, shattering the cheerful chatter. Plates clattered to the ground. Someone shouted my name. Blood surged from the puncture wounds, hot and fast, soaking my sandal and streaming down toward my ankle. I fell sideways off the bench, clutching at the dog's head, instinctively trying to push him away, but his jaw was locked. The weight of him pressed me into the grass, and all I could hear was the frantic barking mixed with my own panicked gasps. Children screamed and scattered toward the house. My little cousin David was crying so loudly I could barely distinguish his voice. Zeus. Stop! Oh my God! Claire! My mother's voice cracked as she stumbled forward. One hand flying to her phone, she was shouting into it within seconds. 911, we need an ambulance. My daughter is being attacked. Her sobs punctuated every word. My father's military reflexes kicked in. He grabbed the nearest heavy dish towel from the table and threw himself down beside me. Heel off, he barked, trying to pry the dog away. The German shepherd snarled resistant, but my father's strength finally forced his jaw to release. Agony flared as the teeth pulled free of my flesh, leaving ragged edges that instantly began pouring blood. I gasped, curling into myself, clutching my leg. The towel pressed hard against the wound as my father muttered curses, his knuckles white. The red spread so quickly across the white fabric that it looked like someone had upended a paint bucket. All around me, the scene dissolved into chaos. My cousins had their phones out filming with trembling hands. My aunt was screaming at Laura, "What is wrong with you? Are you insane?" And my uncle pulled her back as if afraid Laura might lash out at them too. But Laura stood calmly by the picnic table, her expression eerily composed. Her manicured fingers brushed a strand of dark hair behind her ear, and she looked down at me with something that chilled me more than the attack itself. A smile, a cold, deliberate smile. Why, I rasped, barely able to form the word through the pain. My voice trembled. "Why would you do that?" She did not answer. Instead, she tilted her head slightly, eyes glinting with an unsettling satisfaction as though she had been waiting for this exact moment. The German shepherd, still straining against my father's hold, growled low in his throat. His teeth were stained with my blood drool dripping onto the grass. The sound of sirens faint in the distance began to mix with the high-pitched sobs of children watching from the kitchen window. My daughter Lily pressed her palms against the glass, eyes wide and terrified as she mouthed, "Mommy." Neighbors rushed into the yard after hearing the commotion. Mrs. Peterson from next door froze on the patio steps when she saw the crimson streaks down my leg. "Dear God," she whispered, clutching her chest. Another neighbor pulled out his phone, saying loudly to anyone who would listen, "I saw it all. I heard her order that dog. I will testify." I tried to sit up, but the pain seared so sharply that I nearly blacked out. My head spun, sweat breaking out across my forehead. My father barked at me to stay still, pressing the towel harder, muttering that he needed another one. The fabric was already drenched, the red seeping through his fingers. My mother's voice rose higher into hysteria as she argued with the emergency operator. "No, this was not an accident," her sister commanded the dog. Yes, her sister. She told it to bite her. "Hurry, she is bleeding so badly." I looked back at Laura, my vision blurring, my ears filled with the rushing sound of my own pulse. For a fleeting second, I hoped she would break, would cry, or deny, or show some flicker of remorse. But she only adjusted her blazer, standing taller as though she had proven something. The sirens grew louder. The crowd of family and neighbors closed in, some shouting, some crying, everyone demanding to know what had possessed Laura. And in the middle of it all, I lay on the grass, blood pouring from my leg, my heart pounding with the single thought that refused to leave me. Why had my own sister decided to destroy me in front of everyone I loved? The sirens grew louder as I lay on the grass, my father pressing a towel against my bleeding leg, my mother shouting into her phone, and cousins filming with trembling hands. The backyard that had moments before been filled with laughter and the smell of barbecue was now a battlefield of accusations, panic, and disbelief. Some relatives ran toward me trying to help, while others turned their attention to Laura, their voices raised in anger. "You are out of your mind!" Laura, Aunt Margaret shouted, her face pale. "Ordering your dog to attack your own sister. What were you thinking?" Laura only lifted her chin and crossed her arms, her eyes fixed on me like I was prey. Uncle Frank stepped between Margaret and Laura, as though protecting Laura from words that could hurt more than the truth already spilling into the yard. He muttered that nobody had seen clearly what happened, that maybe the dog had just reacted. His words stirred the crowd, and soon whispers circled. Did Claire provoke it? Did she kick the dog? Was it just an accident? The doubt spread like wildfire, eating at the certainty of what everyone had just witnessed. My body trembled on the grass, pain radiating from my leg with each heartbeat, but a different pain twisted deeper inside me. Was I going to be painted as the cause of this? Was Laura going to convince everyone that I had done something to deserve being mauled in front of my daughter? My father barked at the gathering relatives to bring more towels, his voice carrying the authority of his years as a soldier. He pinned the German shepherd down with one arm, his muscles straining as the dog continued to growl and jerk, desperate to lunge again. Blood dripped from its teeth, a gruesome reminder of how close I had come to worse injury. My mother, her face blotched with tears, knelt beside me. "Stay with me, Claire. Do not pass out. Help is on the way." She tried to sound calm, but her voice quivered with fear and something else I could not quite name. Hesitation. Behind her, Laura remained unnervingly still, her expression a mask of superiority. Some cousins began siding with her. "Maybe Claire startled Zeus," one whispered. "He is trained, but animals react." Another added, "Laura would never do something like that without a reason." Their words cut deeper than the bite, each one stabbing at my sense of belonging in this family. I stared at them, my breath shaky, my thoughts racing. Had years of being the second daughter, the overlooked teacher compared to the glamorous attorney, prepared them to believe her over me? The dog's growls mixed with the crying of children inside the house. I caught sight of Lily again through the window, her small hands pressed against the glass as tears streaked down her cheeks. Her lips formed my name, silent, desperate. My chest tightened with guilt that she was watching all of this unfold, her young mind etching trauma she would carry for years. My father shouted for someone to restrain Laura, and for a moment it looked like he might tackle her too, but he stopped himself, his discipline holding him back. Instead, he glared at her with the kind of look that once stopped soldiers in their tracks. Laura did not flinch. She simply smirked. Neighbors who had gathered near the fence were murmuring. I heard her shout the command one man insisted. Clear as day. She wanted the dog to attack. Another neighbor shook his head, saying, "I don't know. Maybe it was an accident. Families fight, dogs react." The conflicting voices swirled around me, tightening the noose of doubt. My pulse hammered. I wanted to scream at all of them to tell them what I had heard, but my throat felt like it was closing. My blood loss made my vision swim, and I wondered if I might faint right there, becoming powerless in the story Laura was weaving. She crouched down, finally, her eyes meeting mine. Her whisper was sharp enough that only I could hear. "Maybe they will believe you. Maybe they won't. Either way, you are finished." My stomach churned with dread, but beneath it a flicker of anger sparked. The betrayal was total. My own sister had turned the entire family gathering into a spectacle of violence and humiliation, and now she was daring me to fight for my truth, while my body bled into the soil of my father's lawn. The paramedics' voices rang out as they rushed through the gate, their calm commands cutting through the noise. Yet even as they knelt beside me checking my vitals, the question burned in my mind: was I going to be saved only to lose everything else? My reputation, my family's faith, and my place as a mother who could protect her child from the very people who shared her blood. 3 days before the barbecue that turned my world upside down, I was in Laura's guest room helping her pack for a business trip. She had gone upstairs to take a phone call, leaving her tote bag on the bed. I only meant to grab my sweater from the chair, but the bag tipped, spilling out files and a small black USB drive. Something about the way she snatched her tote everywhere she went had always made me curious. I bent down and picked it up, intending to put it back, but a tiny label on the side with Lily's name written in Laura's handwriting stopped me cold. My pulse quickened. What reason would Laura have to label anything with my daughter's name? Against my better judgment, I slipped the USB into my pocket, my hands trembling, telling myself I would return it once I looked. That night, when Lily had fallen asleep and my husband was showering, I plugged the drive into my laptop. The folder that appeared was named Special Moments. At first, I thought maybe it was birthday photos, but as soon as I opened one of the videos, my stomach lurched. It was Laura sitting on the couch whispering into Lily's ear. Her tone was soft, playful almost, but the words made my skin crawl. She told my daughter that they had secrets no one else should know, that special time with Aunt Laura was different, that Mommy did not need to understand. The video ended with Laura kissing the top of Lily's head in a way that felt rehearsed, staged, as if she were creating evidence of closeness. My fingers shook so badly I nearly dropped the laptop. I slammed it shut and sat there in the dark, my heart hammering. Could I have misunderstood? Was she just playing a silly game? But no, the look in Laura's eyes was wrong. Her smile stretched too tight, her whispers deliberate. I wanted to tell my mother immediately to warn someone, but when I did, she brushed me off with that infuriating calm voice of hers. Claire, you are too sensitive. Laura adores Lily. She buys her gifts, she helps you with babysitting. Do not invent problems where there are none. Her dismissal stung, but worse, it planted the seed of self-doubt that Laura had been watering for years. Maybe I was imagining things. Maybe I was jealous of Laura's career, her money the way my parents always praised her. Still, I could not shake the gnawing unease that something terrible was brewing. I began to notice other details that haunted me in hindsight. Twice that week, I found Lily clutching toys I did not remember buying, dolls that Laura claimed she had given her. Lily shrugged when I asked, saying Aunt Laura brought them over during babysitting. Then one evening, as I tucked Lily into bed, she whispered that she did not want Aunt Laura to watch her anymore. I pressed her gently, but she shut down, turning her face to the wall. My throat tightened, my mind replaying the video from the USB. The unease grew into a storm inside me, but still, I kept quiet, afraid that if I accused Laura without proof, I would be the one painted as hysterical. My husband noticed my distraction, asking what was wrong, but I shook my head, saying it was just stress from teaching. In reality, I spent every spare minute replaying those seconds on the screen. Laura's lips brushing against my child's ear, the whisper of words meant to isolate and control. The night before the barbecue, I almost deleted the files, thinking maybe if they were gone, I could pretend none of it was real. Instead, I tucked the USB into my desk drawer, my hands sweating, unable to sleep. I told myself I would confront Laura soon, that I would not let her near Lily again. But then the day of the family gathering came, and I pushed the thought aside in the chaos of preparing potato salad and paper plates. As I stood in the backyard that afternoon, talking with relatives, watching Laura's German Shepherd lying obediently at her feet, the memory of that USB gnawed at the back of my mind. I saw the way she leaned down to adjust the dog's collar, whispering into his ear the same way she had whispered to Lily, and I shivered, though the Texas heat was oppressive. It was only a flash, a moment of dread, and then the laughter of cousins drowned it out. But when she shouted "bite" and the dog's teeth ripped into my leg, the entire puzzle snapped together. The unease I had buried for days had been a warning I ignored, a warning that could have saved me from the pain and humiliation of bleeding in front of everyone. And as I writhed on the ground, her smile fixed on me, all I could think was that I had been right all along, that my intuition had screamed danger, and nobody believed me until it was too late. The dog had been pulled back and restrained by my father, but the chaos around me had not eased. My calf throbbed with each pulse, blood soaking through layers of towels that felt useless against the relentless flow. I tried to shift my weight to sit up, but the dizziness swarmed my head, and for a second I feared I might pass out in front of everyone. The noise of shouting relatives and crying children blurred into a single roar until Laura's voice cut through it again, low and sharp, directed at me like the point of a blade. "You will not teach anyone anymore, Claire." The words were not loud enough for everyone, but I heard them, and they sliced through me worse than the dog's teeth. My breath caught, and I looked up at her face. She was not panicked like the others. She was calm, eerily calm, her eyes glittering with triumph. It was then that I noticed the steak knife on the picnic table, its blade smeared with grease from cutting meat earlier. It lay only a few feet from where Laura stood within her reach if she wanted it. My mind screamed in alarm, my body flooding with adrenaline despite the pain. I saw her hand twitch, her fingers curling as she took a step toward the table. My father was busy restraining the German Shepherd, his hands full, his gaze locked on keeping the dog under control. My mother was still on the phone with the dispatcher crying that her daughter was bleeding, not realizing another danger was seconds away. Nobody else seemed to notice Laura's calculated movement toward the knife. For one terrifying moment, I saw the future laid out, Laura gripping that knife, lunging toward me, finishing what the dog had started. A rush of heat coursed through me, a primal instinct to survive. I slammed my heel against the leg of the picnic table with every ounce of strength left in me. The table shuddered, plates crashing to the ground, drinks spilling across the grass. The knife clattered and spun, landing several feet away in the dirt. Gasps erupted around me. Some relatives cried out in confusion, others scrambled back, their eyes darting between me and the knife. Laura's face twisted, the mask, slipping rage flashing like lightning. She lunged forward, her arm outstretched toward where the knife had fallen. But before she could reach it, my cousin Mark grabbed her wounded arm, jerking her back. She shrieked, her voice no longer calm or composed, but guttural, animalistic. I forced myself onto one elbow, my vision swimming, and shouted for someone to stop her. My uncle joined Mark, both men wrestling her down to the grass as she kicked and clawed, screaming that I was lying, that I was dangerous, that they did not understand what was really happening. My father dragged the dog back toward the garage, its growls mixing with Laura's furious cries, and for a moment it felt like the world was collapsing into pure madness. The neighbors standing at the fence muttered that they had seen enough, that they would swear she had gone for the knife. My heart pounded my chest tight, but relief slid through me in jagged breaths. I had stopped her, if only barely. My leg ached, blood still streaming, but I was alive. Another second, another inch, and she might have turned the barbecue into a crime scene worse than anyone could imagine. The thought chilled me to my core. As my cousin pinned Laura's wrists into the dirt, her eyes locked on mine, and her voice, hoarse from screaming, carried across the yard. "You think you are safe, but this is only the beginning." A shiver ran down my spine, and I clutched the towel tighter against my wound. My mind replayed the moment her hand reached for the knife, the sheer inevitability of it. I realized then that what happened with the dog was not an accident, not a loss of control. It was deliberate, calculated, and escalating. If I had not kicked the table, she might have ended me right there, under the summer sun, in front of my family and my child. The wail of sirens grew louder until the red and blue lights flashed against the trees and the chain-link fence. Relief should have washed over me, but all I felt was a sick mixture of fear and humiliation as I lay on the ground surrounded by my family's chaos. The gate banged open and two uniformed officers stormed into the yard, one with a hand resting on his holster, the other holding a radio against his shoulder. A pair of paramedics followed, pushing a stretcher, their calm voices a strange contrast to the screaming all around. "Everyone step back," one officer barked. "Give us space!" My father reluctantly eased the blood-soaked towel from my leg so the paramedics could crouch beside me. I winced as one of them pressed fresh gauze against the puncture wounds. The pain shot up like fire, and I nearly bit through my lip. "Stay with me, ma'am," he said, his tone steady. "You're losing blood, but we've got you." My mother clutched my hand, her face wet with tears, still muttering into her phone as though the operator could somehow calm her. Then the officers turned their attention to Laura. She stood with her arms crossed, eyes sharp and defiant, as though none of this touched her. "Did you command the dog to attack your sister?" one officer demanded. Before Laura could respond, voices rang out from the crowd of neighbors and relatives. I heard her shout it clear as day. Mrs. Peterson called from the fence. She said, "Bite." Another neighbor added, "I'll testify too." That wasn't an accident. The weight of their words hit me with both relief and dread. Relief that I was not alone. Dread because I knew Laura would never accept responsibility. Her lips curled into a sneer. "They're lying," Claire provoked him. "Zeus only reacted because she has always hated me. She's unstable. Everyone knows it." Gasps rippled through the group. My chest burned with fury, but before I could speak, the officer raised his hand. "Enough. We'll sort this out formally." At that moment, a white truck with bold black letters pulled up to the curb. "Animal control." A man in a gray uniform stepped out carrying a thick leash and a pole with a loop. He walked straight toward my father, who was still restraining the snarling German shepherd near the garage. "I need to secure the dog," he said firmly. My father's jaw clenched, but he nodded, handing over the leash. The animal control officer kept his movements precise, slipping the loop around Zeus's neck, pulling it tight and leading him toward the truck. The shepherd resisted muscles straining eyes locked on me, even as he was dragged away. My stomach turned as I watched him disappear behind the truck door, his growls muffled by the slam. The officer returned, wiping sweat from his brow. "The animal will be quarantined for 10 days while we investigate. Bites like this are taken seriously, especially if a command was given. If the evidence supports it, this dog may be labeled dangerous." My father muttered under his breath, angry but helpless. My mother broke into sobs, hugging me tighter as though losing the dog was somehow another fracture in the family. Laura erupted, her voice shrill. "You cannot take him! That's my trained dog! He listens to me, he protects me, this is all a setup!" Claire staged this. Her protests were drowned out by the officer reading her rights as he pulled out a small notepad to take preliminary statements. Relatives began talking all at once, each shouting over the other, some defending Laura, some condemning her. The noise pressed against my skull until the paramedic leaned close and whispered, "Focus on breathing. In through the nose, out through the mouth. Let them deal with the circus." His calm tone anchored me, but inside, doubt gnawed. Would the officers believe the witnesses or Laura's polished lies? Would the truth about that USB ever come to light? Or would this moment be twisted until I was the one painted unstable? I looked up at Laura, who now paced like a caged animal, her hands gesturing wildly as she shouted about conspiracies. When her eyes met mine, I saw no fear, no remorse, only calculation. She mouthed words only I could see. "You will lose everything." A chill seeped into my bones despite the Texas heat. The paramedics lifted me onto the stretcher, securing straps across my chest and legs. The pain in my calf pulsed in rhythm with my racing heart. As they wheeled me past the cluster of relatives, I caught the mixture of pity and suspicion in their eyes. My family was already divided, and I was bleeding proof of betrayal. The officers continued questioning witnesses, but the last thing I heard before the ambulance doors closed was Laura's voice, sharp and venomous. "She is the crazy one, not me. You'll see. She set me up." And even as the sirens blared and the city blurred past the windows, the words burrowed into me. I realized the attack was not the end. It was the opening move in a war my sister had been planning for much longer than I had dared to imagine. At the hospital, the stitches burned as the doctor worked on closing the deep punctures in my leg, but my mind was elsewhere, trapped on the memory of Laura's smirk. I barely heard the nurse explain antibiotics and painkillers because all I could think was how far my sister had gone to destroy me. The next morning, Detective Marissa Hale visited my room. She was in her 40s, her brown hair pulled back, eyes sharp but steady, the kind of gaze that made you feel both examined and protected at once. She introduced herself as the lead on the case and explained she had already spoken with the officer's neighbors and animal control. "What I need from you is everything you know about your sister," she said, pulling out a slim notebook. My throat went dry. I told her about the USB I had found, how it was labeled with Lily's name, how the video had disturbed me so much that I had hidden it. Her pen scratched quickly across the page, her eyes narrowing when I described the whispers Laura had recorded. "Do you still have the drive?" she asked. I nodded and told her it was in my desk drawer at home. Within hours, an officer retrieved it and delivered it to forensics. That same evening, Detective Hale called me back, her voice measured but urgent. "The USB contains multiple files. Metadata shows they were created on nights your sister babysat your daughter. Nothing has been tampered with." My stomach lurched as I realized the paranoia I had tried to dismiss was now undeniable truth. 2 days later, Hale invited me to the station to review additional evidence. My husband drove me my leg stiff and throbbing under layers of bandages. Inside a gray-walled room, she laid out photographs taken from Laura's laptop recovered after a search warrant. On the screen were notes typed in Laura's careful font describing strategies to discredit me as a mother. Lines read, "Document Claire losing temper with Lily. Create file of unsafe environment. Present to court if needed." My hands shook as I scanned each page. It was a legal strategy, one she must have crafted with the same precision she used in her cases, except the target was not an opposing counsel, but me, her own sister. "This is not all," Hale said quietly. She slid another folder across the table, this one full of receipts. "These are from a storage facility on the edge of town. The unit is under your sister's name. We executed a warrant this morning." My chest tightened as she spread out photographs. A small twin bed made up with Disney princess sheets. Shelves lined with stuffed animals. Bins labeled with Lily's name, each containing clothes I recognized pieces that had gone missing from laundry baskets. Even Lily's favorite purple jacket that I had assumed she lost at school. I gripped the table to keep from collapsing. She was building a room for her. I whispered, the horror settling in my bones. Hale nodded grimly, and possibly preparing for something more. "We also found drawings your daughter made at preschool, things your sister could only have taken directly from your home." My eyes stung with tears. My daughter's innocence had been stolen piece by piece, hidden away in a rented cell. Hale went on explaining how cameras at the storage facility had captured Laura visiting weekly carrying bags. The metadata from her laptop matched dates she had accessed photos of Lily. It was meticulous like a puzzle, only now being assembled in front of me. "This is beyond sibling rivalry," Hale said. "This is calculated grooming and an attempt to construct a false narrative that you are unfit." I felt bile rise in my throat. I told her about Lily's reluctance to be with Laura, about the new toys I did not recognize, about the way she whispered she did not want Aunt Laura to babysit anymore. Every detail became another piece of the damning picture. My husband sat stiffly beside me, jaw clenched, eyes glassy with rage. "How do we stop her from getting near Lily again?" he demanded. Hale assured us a no-contact order was already in motion, but her tone carried weight. "This will not be quick. Your sister is a lawyer. She knows the system. She will fight." That night, I could not sleep. Every creak in the house made me bolt upright, convinced Laura had planted more cameras or devices. We scoured the rooms and closets, running hands along picture frames and vents. When we found nothing, the emptiness felt worse because I knew she had already invaded once. The following week, Hale called with another development. Forensics had pulled deleted files from Laura's hard drive showing doctored audio clips where only Lily's crying could be heard without context. Notes indicated Laura planned to present them as evidence of me harming my own child. My skin crawled. The manipulation was so thorough, so ruthless, that I wondered if she had ever loved me at all. At the same time, the community was buzzing. Neighbors shared rumors, some saying I was exaggerating, others insisting they had seen Laura act strangely with children before. Social media posts appeared with clips from the barbecue, Laura's command audible, my scream following. The court of public opinion was as divided as my family. Through it all, Lily clung to me, asking when she could go outside again without being scared. I promised her we were safe, even as doubt coiled inside me. The image of that storage unit haunted me most, the bed. Waiting the toys arranged the evidence of a future she wanted to steal. Detective Hale ended our meeting with a warning. "Claire, this case is going to widen. She was too organized for this to be limited to just you. We're checking if she has tried similar tactics with other families." The thought made me sick, but it also hardened my resolve. Laura had not just tried to destroy me. She had endangered my child and possibly others. As I left the station on crutches, reporters shouted questions from across the parking lot. I kept my head down, but one caught my ear. "Did your sister plan to kidnap your daughter?" The word lodged in my chest. Kidnap. It was not speculation anymore. It was evidence receipts and a bedroom built in secret. And as I climbed into the car, I realized the attack at the barbecue had not been the climax. It was only the doorway into a darker truth that was finally beginning to surface. The days following the investigation felt like walking through smoke, unable to see what was real and what was illusion. My mother called constantly, her voice brittle, insisting there had to be an explanation, that Laura could not possibly have done what the police were saying. She repeated the same words over and over, as though if she clung to them tightly enough they would rewrite reality. She is my eldest. She is brilliant. She is not a monster. My father remained mostly silent, his face a wall of stone, but his silence cut deeper because it told me he saw what I saw, yet could not bring himself to admit it aloud. Family dinners were canceled, group texts disintegrated into arguments, and relatives picked sides like spectators at a trial that had not yet begun. Some cousins wrote that I had misunderstood everything, that Laura's dog had acted on instinct, that I had dramatized events. Others sent messages late at night telling me they had always been uneasy about her, that the barbecue finally exposed what they had feared. Every ding of my phone became a new wound. The neighborhood was no better. A shaky clip filmed on someone's phone spread through local Facebook groups showing me screaming as blood streamed down my leg and Laura's voice shouting the command. Comment sections exploded. Strangers debated whether I was the victim or the villain. Some called Laura dangerous, others said using police against family was disgraceful. My name became a hashtag in our small town. At the grocery store, I caught people whispering behind shelves. On the street, neighbors crossed quickly, either to hug me in sympathy or to avoid me altogether. I felt like I was living inside a courtroom long before stepping into the actual one. At school, the storm struck harder. The principal called me into his office 2 days after the barbecue, his hands folded, eyes heavy with discomfort. He explained that due to the publicity and the seriousness of the accusations, the district had decided to place me on administrative leave until further notice. "It is not a punishment," he said quickly, "but for the safety of the children we have to appear impartial." My stomach dropped. Teaching had been my life, my purpose. Standing in front of my class had given me identity. Now it was stripped away in an instant, not because of anything I had done, but because of my sister's destruction. I walked out of the school that day carrying a box of supplies, avoiding the curious glances of parents waiting in the pickup line. Shame pressed against me, though logically I knew it was not mine to bear. That evening, a letter arrived from Laura's attorney. It was thick, formal, and poisonous. They were filing a civil suit against me for defamation and claiming I had fabricated evidence to frame Laura out of jealousy. The letter described me as unstable, bitter, and manipulative, painting a picture of a woman unraveling. Reading it felt like drowning. I knew she was behind every word, using the law she had mastered to turn the system into her weapon. My husband slammed his fist on the counter when he read it. "She is trying to bury you under paper. Do not let her." but I could not stop the tremor in my hands. It was one thing to be attacked by a dog. It was another to be attacked by the machinery of law with its cold, merciless language. Meanwhile, my mother continued to deny everything. When I tried to explain the storage unit, she snapped, "Maybe she was keeping those things for Lily because she loves her. Maybe you are twisting this." Her refusal to see the truth cut me deeper than Laura's lies. It made me question whether blood ties meant safety at all. Through it all, Lily clung closer, waking from nightmares, asking if Aunt Laura would come back. I promised her she would not, but each promise felt fragile against the storm outside. As the legal notices piled on the table and the whispers grew louder in the community, I realized Laura's attack had not only wounded my leg, it had fractured every circle of my life, family, work reputation. She wanted to isolate me until I had no support left. That realization filled me not just with fear, but with a grim kind of resolve. If she wanted to destroy me publicly, then the truth would have to be exposed just as publicly. Detective Hale called one evening just as I was trying to coax Lily into bed after another round of nightmares. Her tone was direct, but not unkind. "Claire, the district attorney, has assigned Daniel Ruiz to your case. He is one of the best, but he is going to need you to be strong. Laura's defense is going to be aggressive." The following morning, I sat across from Ruiz in his office, a stack of case files towering between us. He was a man in his 50s with salt and pepper hair and a calm, deliberate way of speaking that made even the worst news sound measured. He explained that the prosecution's case would lean heavily on digital evidence metadata from the USB. The video captured by neighbors at the barbecue and the receipts and security footage from the storage unit. "What we need from you is consistency," he said, tapping his pen. "Your testimony has to be clear. Do not embellish. Do not guess. Let the evidence carry the weight. We have enough to show intent, but Laura will use every trick she knows." Hearing her name made me shiver. Ruiz continued, warning that Laura's attorneys would try to discredit me by digging into my mental health, my career suspension, even my parenting. "She will try to make you look unstable. You need to be prepared." I nodded, though my hands twisted in my lap. He recommended I start therapy immediately, not just for healing but to demonstrate responsibility. I already had a referral, so I booked sessions that week. The therapist's office smelled faintly of lavender, but I was too tense to appreciate it. She listened as I recounted everything from the attack to the USB to the civil suit. When I finished, she said softly, "You are not paranoid. You are traumatized. That is a very different thing." Her words gave me a sliver of strength. Meanwhile, Ruiz assembled a witness list. Mrs. Peterson and several neighbors who heard the command would testify. My father would describe restraining the dog. Even my cousin Mark, who had grabbed Laura when she lunged for the knife, agreed reluctantly to appear despite pressure from other relatives. Still, I knew half the family would refuse, or worse, support Laura. My mother had already made it clear she believed Laura's innocence, telling anyone who would listen that I had exaggerated. That betrayal was almost as sharp as Laura's. Ruiz reassured me that family loyalty was expected, but that the jury would rely more on hard evidence than opinions. He showed me still images from the neighbor's video. Laura's mouth clearly forming the word bite, my body jerking as the dog launched. "This is powerful," he said. "We will show it frame by frame." He also presented the storage unit photographs, the princess sheets, the bins labeled with Lily's name, the jacket, the toys. My breath hitched as I stared. Seeing them displayed like evidence in a slideshow felt surreal, like pieces of my private life had been stolen and twisted into a crime scene. Ruiz placed a reassuring hand on the table. "This will speak louder than anything she says. A jury will not dismiss this." Still, I could not silence the gnawing fear. Laura was skilled in the courtroom. She had built her career on convincing juries. The idea of facing her there, her eyes burning into me as she spun lies, made my stomach churn. At night, I rehearsed what I would say, sometimes whispering to the mirror, sometimes writing notes I would later tear up. My therapist urged me to focus on grounding, reminding me that my truth did not need theatrics. "The evidence aligns with your story. Trust it." Lily remained my anchor. Each time she woke crying that Aunt Laura might return, I promised her she was safe, that police and lawyers and even strangers were making sure she would never be hurt again. Watching her small body relax into sleep made me more determined to endure whatever court demanded. Ruiz met with us again a week before the hearing. He laid out the sequence opening statements, witness testimonies, cross-examinations, presentation of evidence. He warned me Laura's side would paint me as unstable, might even suggest I had planted the storage unit items. My heart pounded at the thought, but he reminded me that every receipt bore her name. Every fingerprint matched hers, every camera showed her face. She cannot escape the digital trail. Technology is our strongest ally here. Leaving his office that day clutching the folder of notes, I felt fear, but also something new, determination. The same sister who had once been my rival in childhood was now my enemy in survival. She had planned meticulously, but she had underestimated one thing: my will to protect my daughter and reclaim my life. The court date loomed like a storm on the horizon, heavy with threat, but also with the promise of clearing skies. The courthouse smelled faintly of disinfectant and old wood, a place where lives were measured in evidence and arguments. I sat at the plaintiff's table, my legs stiff beneath the fabric of my skirt, scars hidden but throbbing as if they remembered on their own. Laura entered in a tailored suit, her sling conspicuous from the dog bite she had once called excessive force. Her eyes met mine across the room, cool and venomous. She looked like the lawyer she had always been, polished and in control, but beneath the surface I could see the cracks of desperation. The judge called the session to order and opening statements began. Ruiz rose with steady authority, laying out the case, a deliberate attack at a family barbecue. A trained German shepherd commanded to maim digital evidence proving Laura's plan to frame me as an unfit mother and a storage unit prepared as if for abduction. Every word tightened the air in the room, drawing the jury's eyes toward me, toward Lily seated quietly with my husband in the gallery. When Laura's attorney spoke, his voice was smooth as silk, weaving a story of sibling rivalry of a bitter younger sister jealous of her accomplished older sibling. He claimed the dog had acted on instinct, that the USB had been planted, that the storage unit was nothing more than a place Laura rented for personal use. The narrative was familiar, twisted exactly as Laura had always painted me. Unstable, insecure, vindictive. My stomach churned, but I sat still, my hands folded, determined not to give them more to use. The first witness was Mrs. Peterson. Her voice trembled as she described hearing Laura shout the word, "bite," watching Zeus launch forward, hearing my scream. The defense tried to rattle her, suggesting she misheard that noise from the grill or chatter could have confused her, but she held firm. "I know what I heard," she said, her eyes flashing toward Laura. She gave that command. Other neighbors followed, each recounting what they saw and heard. The cumulative weight pressed heavily on the defense. Then Ruiz presented the neighbor's video, projecting it on the courtroom screen. The room went silent as the grainy footage showed me sitting at the table. Laura's voice sharp, the dog leaping my body, toppling blood, visible even in low-quality pixels. Played frame by frame. The jurors leaned forward, watching Laura's mouth form the unmistakable word. "Bite." My chest tightened, reliving it, but I forced myself not to look away. The defense tried to object, claiming the video lacked clarity, but the judge overruled. Ruiz's voice was steady. "This is not imagination. This is deliberate." The storage unit evidence came next. Photographs filled the screen, the princess sheets, the dolls lined neatly, the bins labeled with Lily's name. Gasps rippled through the gallery. Even the judge's face hardened. Ruiz read aloud the receipt records signed in Laura's name, dated months before the attack. Surveillance footage showed her visiting weekly hauling bags. The defense argued she was storing donations for charity, that labeling items with Lily's name was coincidence. But Ruiz countered with fingerprint analysis, every surface covered in Laura's prints. "Coincidence does not explain stolen jackets, toothbrushes, and preschool drawings," he said. I bit my lips so hard it nearly bled, tears pricking my eyes as I saw pieces of my daughter's life displayed like trophies in a crime scene. Ruiz called my cousin Mark to the stand. His voice shook as he described grabbing Laura's arm when she lunged for the knife. The defense pounced, pressing him on whether he might have misinterpreted her movement, but Mark snapped, his anger breaking through. "She was going for that knife. I saw it." I stopped her. His outburst silenced the room. My father testified next, detailing how he restrained the dog, how he saw Laura's face filled with intent. My mother was called reluctantly. She twisted her hands torn between daughters. The defense tried to lean on her denial, her claim that Laura could not have meant harm. Ruiz gently asked her if love blinded her. Tears streamed down her cheeks as she admitted, "Maybe I did not want to see. Maybe I could not face it." The courtroom air grew heavier. Then Ruiz called Detective Hale. Calm, precise, she explained metadata, how files could not lie, how the USB matched nights Laura babysat. She detailed the doctored audio clips, the deleted notes on Laura's laptop, planning to paint me as abusive. Jurors scribbled furiously, their expressions hardening. Laura finally took the stand in her own defense. Her voice was steady, her performance polished. She painted me as unstable, claimed I had planted the USB, that I was desperate to destroy her out of envy. She described me as unfit, referencing my suspension from school. She even suggested I had coached neighbors to lie. For a moment, listening to her, I felt that old tug, the weight of her manipulation, the possibility that people might believe her. But then Ruiz rose for cross-examination. He walked slowly, pausing before holding up a photograph of the storage unit. "If this was your personal space, why label bins with your niece's name?" Laura faltered for the first time. He pressed further, showing her the receipts, her signature, her fingerprints. "If this was fabricated by your sister, why are your prints on every page, every object?" Her composure cracked her answer, stumbling. Ruiz ended by projecting the video once more. Laura's voice clear, commanding. "Bite." The silence that followed was crushing. The judge's gavel echoed as the jury was dismissed to deliberate. Hours later, they returned, faces grim. The foreperson stood. "We find the defendant, Laura Dawson, guilty on all counts. The charges included aggravated assault conspiracy, attempted child endangerment, and evidence tampering." The judge sentenced her to 18 years in prison, revoked her law license permanently, and issued a lifetime no-contact order with any minors, including Lily. Gasps filled the courtroom, my mother sobbing into her hands, my father's jaw tightening as if he had aged a decade in a moment. Laura's face twisted a mix of fury and disbelief. She turned to me as deputies took her by the arms, her voice hissing. "This is not over." But the bars that would soon surround her told me otherwise. Relief crashed over me so hard I nearly collapsed. Ruiz's hand on my shoulder steadied me. My daughter's small arms wrapped around my waist as she whispered, "Mommy, are we safe now?" And for the first time in months, I could answer with certainty. "Yes, baby. We are safe." The war had been brutal, the betrayal unimaginable, but in that courtroom, under the weight of undeniable evidence, justice had spoken. After the verdict, the world did not magically return to normal, but the air felt lighter, as if a storm had finally passed. My leg healed slowly, the scar a jagged reminder of teeth and betrayal, but the deeper wounds were not on my skin. They were in my home, in my daughter's eyes, in the way I startled at every sound for weeks after Laura was taken away. Therapy became a lifeline. Twice a week, my husband and I drove Lily to see a child specialist who used art and play to guide her through memories too heavy for words. At first, Lily barely spoke, only drawing dark scribbles and hiding her face. Then one day, she painted a house with all three of us standing outside holding hands. It was not perfect, but it was the first glimpse of healing. My husband and I also began sessions together. The therapist challenged us to rebuild trust not only with each other, but with ourselves. She reminded me that ignoring my instincts had allowed Laura to get too close. From then on, we created rules clear and strict. No one outside of us would ever have unsupervised time with Lily. Playdates, family visits, even babysitting by trusted friends were now subject to boundaries. Some relatives complained, saying we were overreacting, but I no longer cared. Safety came first. We also installed cameras throughout the house, every corner covered not out of paranoia, but out of necessity. Each month, we swept the rooms with a detector to ensure no hidden devices lingered. It became part of our routine, like locking doors or paying bills. Lily even helped holding the small scanner, her laughter breaking through when it beeped harmlessly. It was her way of regaining power. My mother remained caught between denial and grief. She attended a court-mandated family trauma group and began to admit how her favoritism had blinded her. She cried when she visited, supervised, of course, apologizing for calling me paranoid. The trust was not fully repaired, but small steps mattered. My father, on the other hand, stood firm by my side, driving me to medical appointments, fixing the fence where the chaos had unfolded, as though repairing wood could patch our fractured family. Work eventually called. The district lifted my suspension after the trial, apologizing quietly for doubting me. Walking back into my classroom felt both terrifying and empowering. My students cheered, some hugging me tightly. I taught math problems and read stories with a deeper gratitude, aware of how close I had come to losing it all. Still whispers followed in the teacher's lounge, colleagues unsure what to say. I learned to let the stares slide off me. Outside of work, the whispers of the community faded as other scandals replaced mine. Yet I knew the scar of reputation remained. Strangers might always remember me as the teacher whose sister tried to destroy her. But I refused to let that define me. I chose instead to speak openly at parent meetings, sharing a message I wished someone had given me earlier. I told them to trust their instincts, to listen to their children, to never dismiss unease as paranoia. Some parents cried, others thanked me. If my pain could protect even one more child, then it carried meaning. Lily flourished slowly. She joined an art class, painting flowers and houses, filling our fridge with colors instead of darkness. At night, she still sometimes woke crying, but she learned to whisper her fears instead of burying them. My husband and I took turns holding her, assuring her Aunt Laura would never come back. I told her that the law had made sure of it. She nodded, eyes big and trusting. One day, she drew our family again, this time, adding a small puppy at our feet. "He is ours," she said. We adopted a gentle rescue dog weeks later, giving Lily the chance to replace fear with companionship. Watching her hug that dog, naming him Lucky, felt like reclaiming a piece of joy Laura had tried to steal. Months turned into a year. Laura remained behind bars, her letters intercepted by the court, her attempts to appeal denied. She faded into a name on legal papers, no longer a shadow looming over us. The protective order remained a shield I clung to, even if she was locked away. At a school assembly, I was asked to speak about resilience. Standing before parents and colleagues, I told our story carefully, omitting the darkest details, but keeping the core truth. I ended with words that had become my mantra. Trust your gut-set boundaries and never ignore the quiet warnings that something is wrong. Applause filled the hall, but what mattered most was the relief I saw in the eyes of those who realized they were not alone in their fears. At home, life was not perfect, but it was ours. Dinner at the table, laughter during movie nights, Lily running through the yard with Lucky chasing her. Sometimes she would stop, look up at me and say, "We are safe, right, Mommy?" And each time I would answer with conviction, "Yes, sweetheart, we are safe." One evening, she handed me a drawing she had made at school. It showed our family holding hands, Lucky beside us, and a bright sun overhead. At the bottom, she had written in shaky letters, "Home is safe." I taped it to the fridge, tears blurring my vision. That simple phrase was more valuable than any verdict, any court order. It was proof that healing was possible, that despite betrayal and violence, love had the final word.